Hello, BookTube. I have a TBR for you. Only those of you new to the channel, I do a TBR BY. Not so much a to be read as a to be read by you for the upcoming month, for January. This one's a little late because I was gone for the turning of the year, so I didn't even think about it at the end of the year last year, and I didn't think about it until I was gently reminded this year. But I myself am reading mostly later than January. So my TBR, my actual TBR of my own would be largely full of books that you can't go out and buy. What's the fun of that? So instead of doing that, I thought I would recommend 10 books coming out in January. A lot of these might be out already that I strongly urge you to consider if they're, up your alley, if they're a subject matter that you like. And I'm going to start with the best of them all. It's something we've seen on this channel before. It's The Red Sphinx by Alexander Dumas, a serialized work that he did for Paris newspaper 100 years ago, and a translator went and found the microfiche copies of all of those and stitched them all together and made a new translation of the work. It's a big, huge thing. It's a sequel to The Three Musketeers, but it's a much closer sequel in time to that novel than the more famous sequels that have been reprinted by Oxford. And it's wonderful. It mostly stars Cardinal Richelieu, but it has a large cast of other characters too. It's the whole spectrum of Dumas types, and he writes like the Dickens. He's having such a ball. It was such a fun book to read that you don't notice how big it is. I reviewed it for the Christian Science Monitor, and I glowed about it, and it's getting lots of response. Apparently, readers like hearing that there's a new Alexander Dumas novel. So then there's a modern memoir along the David Sedaris lines. Ordinarily, it'd be the kind of thing that I would hate. I admit, in this case, I was slightly positively predisposed by its epic cover. I hate everyone except you. And I imagine that's what parakeets say in their minds. Anyway, all of them. It's one of those contemporary, here's a wacky thing that happened to me, here's another wacky thing that happened to me, collection of what the publisher calls essays. I hesitate to do that for fear of causing Montaigne and Emerson to spin in their graves. There's nothing in this book that's an essay. These are written down stand-up comedy routines. But that having been said, it's quite entertaining. I wouldn't suggest maybe that you buy it, but as a library pick, it will entertain you in an afternoon, definitely. And then the next one, it's something that I think I've shown on this channel before. It's a subject matter that's rapidly becoming a kind of unhealthy obsession with me. It's Reality Is Not What It Seems by Carlo Rovelli. It's his popularized explanation of the deep background of quantum gravimetrics, quantum mechanics, quantum gravity. He does, for chapter after chapter, he does the deep background, our understanding of gravity, our understanding of mass, etc., etc., slowly coming forward in time to the present day. So the book actually, unlike a lot of science popularizing texts, it gets less comprehensible as it goes along, because it is always approaching quantum mechanics, which don't make any sense at all. And finally it gets there, and the last 2 or 3 chapters are just this squinging orgasm of incomprehensibility. I was staring at the pages. But I could not look away, because I find the subject of quantum mechanics, in 2017, I am determined to come to some sort of détente with the subject of quantum mechanics. And this is, this book didn't do it, but I should definitely recommend it because he's a fantastic teacher. He's a fantastic popular science writer. So if you're interested in that sort of thing at all, then hook up for the ride. He did, his earlier book was a surprise success, 7 basic lessons in physics or something like that. I got a copy and didn't even open it. I didn't even look at it. I just sent it out to a freelancer. So this is my first exposure really to him, and it's really, really good, despite how maddening it is. And the next one, you might as well get used to seeing this book, BookTube, because you have not seen a tsunami like the one that's coming. Everyone is going to be talking about this book and talking about it and talking about it and talking. Of course, I refer to History Is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera, who's really tall and really faux humble and kind of cute and very accessible and poised to become John Green. John Green has left the field, and it's wide open for Adam Silvera. And I predict he has 2 books coming out in 2017. This one is the mother of all tearjerkers. And I predict that it will make him a stamped platinum multimillionaire. I predict that, not even talking about the second book, I predict that after this book, he will be a household name. He will be, bi-coastal houses, all the award shows, sought after everywhere. I would be willing to bet that a few months after this book, the days of him appearing on 6,000 subscriber book blogs will be over forever. I could be wrong. He seems fairly accessible. Maybe he'll just keep that up as a point of honor. This book, he's a hell of a writer, and he exercises a lot more of the same frustrations in me that John Green always did. John Green is not a hell of a writer. And I felt a ton of frustrations about his books because, in addition to him not being all that hell of a writer, he's also an easy writer. Constantly going for the emotional equivalent of a kidney punch to somebody who's not looking. And never earning the emotional heft of his narratives. Never. Not in any of them. And I have a feeling that Adam Silvera learned a lot of lessons from those books, and they're bad lessons. I've seen in his previous book, I saw all kinds of glimmers that he can actually look beyond those lessons, that he can grow as a writer. It's tremendously effective. If you're the type that bawls over books, you will bawl over this book. You will remember the characters. There are 2 scenes in particular, one at the end, that are so well constructed that you won't forget them. So props to him. But this is a very easy book. This is the same thing. I was reminded about halfway through. I was chuckling while I was reading it because I kept remembering a line from The Simpsons that shows zombie-like teenagers swaying back and forth to monotone music, and Bart says, "Making teenagers feel miserable is like shooting fish in a barrel." I agree completely. Nevertheless, get used to the look of it, because this thing comes out in a week, and it's going to be BookTube. It's going to be the whole of BookTube. In fact, you might be liable for civic citation if you don't talk about it. Anyway, let's move on to another book that's also been. I've also shown it on this channel. I read it now twice, and it also invited me back to a lot of the original writings in English translation. It's amazing, and I wanted to praise it, even though it might be a little abstruse. It's Rumi's Secret by Brad Gooch. It's a biography and also a poetical analysis of the Sufi poet Rumi, and it's amazing. It really is amazing. Brad Gooch. I think I've mentioned on this channel. I don't think he can do anything wrong when it comes to biography. He's just a really, really good, sensitive, readable, popular biographer. I would never in a million years have expected that he would pick Rumi as a subject, but I'm glad he did, and because it broke totally new ground with me. So, and it will with you too, I would bet. If you're of a mind to read a biography, I think this is the longest biography on this list. I think I restrained myself from shoving Montaigne in your face. Now, the next one might come as a surprise to some of you. Those of you who've been watching this channel for, 400 videos now, will probably have picked up on the fact that I'm not the biggest fan of the made-up stories. And that in addition to that, the crop of recently lionized American writers, white, male, boring, slow-eyed, womanizing American writers, bore me. I have been progressively glad as one after another of them has dropped off the twig and stopped publishing crap. So this might come as a surprise, and it certainly surprised me at how much I liked it. It's that's dramatic, isn't it? It's the collected stories of E.L. Doctorow. Doctorow's he hit gold with Ragtime, and I think he did an amazing job with Billy Bathgate. But most of his fiction is mind-numbingly boring, and God, that is nothing compared to the man in person when he was alive. Oh my God, you wouldn't have wished conducting an interview with him on your worst enemy. Soporific is understating it. It's bad enough if an interview subject is so boring that he puts the audience to sleep. But when he starts to put the interviewer to sleep, as he did to yours truly, that's when you know you have a problem. So I wasn't expecting much from this collected stories. I had missed all of these stories in their original appearance, so of course I was going to read it. But I was expecting that it would be, boring, and it isn't. These stories are wonderful. They're really, really good, and they made me wonder the whole time if it opened up a whole door on Doctorow that I hadn't thought of until I read these. I hadn't really put two and two together about how episodic a lot of his most powerful fiction is, and how maybe if there had been an F. Scott Fitzgerald style market for it when he was writing, maybe he would have been better off to write short stories than the largely wandering novels that he did. But one way or another, I highly recommend. Let's see if it does it again. Oh, it does. Oh, that's so cool. I highly recommend this book. You'll see it in the front tables of your bookstores and at your library. And then, of course, what would a list like this be without romance? And this is the mighty Eloisa James. This is 7 Minutes in Heaven, and I got an ARC, but I'm pretty sure this is coming out as a hardcover. And I'm not 100% sure, but I could swear that it's her first hardcover, that we have seen her graduate to the type of romance author who can sustain a hardcover. If so, it's certainly well deserved. Her books never ever disappoint, and this one didn't disappoint. It's snappy right from the beginning. She specializes in oil and water, moonlighting style badinage at the beginning. Two love interests that are going to come together, but she makes it harder and harder for them. You can't imagine it, and she does it really well. So I highly recommend it. And then a little bit of nature. Let's see if this is Bird's Art Life. I think we saw the ARC on this channel. The author just ruminates about birds, goes out and looks at them. One of the things I liked about it is how much time is given to quote-unquote common birds, rather than, looking for the ruby-throated cormorant, the one that lives in Central Park and that everybody hunts for all day long. Rather than that, there's a lot of time spent here on just ordinary birds and how wonderful they are. And since I am the house chef for a mob of little sparrows, I can wholeheartedly agree with that. They are amazing. The more you watch them, the more interesting they get. So if you're a bird fan, or if you know one, this is the book of the season to get. And then a graphic novel, but not one that will put off all of you who are still unaccountably resisting the call of superhero comics. I don't know why you would do that, but even so, this is not a superhero graphic novel. This is Beowulf. And it is weird. It's as a graphic novel adaptation of the poem. It starts out fairly normal, fairly straightforward, and then just becomes more and more weird as it goes along. And I love that about it. I thought the artist and the writer did a fantastic job. It reminded me actually of another graphic novel literary adaptation, which was the old Marvel classics, the illustrated classics from Marvel Comics, in which they somehow, I have no idea the size of the pile of cocaine it required, but they somehow got Bill Sienkiewicz to draw Moby Dick. Those of you who don't know anything about comics won't know the name, but those of you who do might. He's brilliant and weird and utterly impressionistically memorable in his work. His work is not cookie cutter in any way, and his Moby Dick is It's one long hallucination, but like this book, it starts out controlled and then gradually gets less and less controlled. uh, so I would recommend this, especially for two groups of people. One, if you know and love the poem, and are therefore on nice firm ground to look at any adaptation. And two, if you have a middle school boy who, as middle school boys will, is starting to rebel against the whole idea of reading, this will work. This will put a hook in that kid. It might not solve the problem, but he won't put it down. So I recommend it. And then last thing I want to show you today is YA, and it's the most hackneyed premise in the world. I read the premise. I made the mistake of reading the premise. With YA. I tend not to anymore. I tend not to read anything at all about the book because the summaries are so depressing, so depressingly derivative that I with YA, the cookie cutter nature of the subgenre is so strict that I have found that almost all of the game comes down to how well the book is written. So I usually don't look at the description. I looked at the description of this one and just rolled my eyes. But the book was really good. It's it's called Wait for Me by Carolyn Leach. It's a World War II novel in which a girl on a Scottish farm, they take in a German prisoner of war, and he's a dreamboat boy. and she, of course, resents him at first, and then feelings grow. And that, you just listening to that, you can think, oh my God, that is so stereotypical, and yet the author really pulls it off. It is really, really enjoyable. So I recommend it. I don't know how much talk it's got on the YA precincts of BookTube, but it deserves it, especially since you got to feel sorry for any YA book that's coming out in January, because nobody's going to care. History Is All You Left Me is the only YA thing anybody is going to care about. So you come out with a YA book in January, what are you going to say at your book launch? To your mother, who's the only person who shows up, because Adam Silvera is down the street at the 92nd Street Y with a line around the building. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe a rising tide will float all boats. But in the meantime, here's another YA book that I can recommend. So there you go. That is a January TBR BY. And if I remember, I'll try to list all the books down below, so you don't have to, scroll through the video and pause and scroll and pause and scroll. And I'll see you soon, BookTube. Sorry for the length of the video.